In the farthest reaches of the Andromeda Galaxy, where stars burned with an otherworldly brilliance and nebulae painted the heavens in hues no human eye could comprehend, lay the crystalline planet of Zylora. Its surface shimmered like a field of diamonds under 3 suns, each casting their own spectrum of light across the landscape. The air itself seemed alive with microscopic particles that danced and sparkled, creating an atmosphere so pure it could sustain life forms far more advanced than anything Earth had ever known. Princess Althea of Zylora moved gracefully through the grand halls of her family's celestial palace, her every step causing the iridescent floor to ripple like liquid crystal. Her presence commanded both awe and reverence, not merely because of her royal lineage but because of what she truly was. One of the last surviving members of the Lumina race, beings who had mastered the art of manipulating starlight itself. Her skin glowed with an inner radiance that shifted colors depending on her emotions, currently a soft lavender indicating her contemplative state. The princess's quarters were a marvel even by Zyloran standards. Walls of living crystal responded to her thoughts, displaying galaxies in motion or scenes from her childhood. A massive window framed the view of Zylora's famous diamond forests, where trees grew from crystallized stardust and sang when the wind passed through their prismatic branches. Yet despite the beauty surrounding her, Althea often found herself gazing longingly at the stars beyond, wondering about the countless worlds that existed beyond her own. Her people possessed technology that made space travel seem as natural as breathing, yet they maintained strict protocols about interstellar contact. The Zylorans believed themselves guardians of cosmic balance, intervening only when necessary to preserve peace among the stars. This philosophy extended particularly to Earth, a young planet whose inhabitants were still struggling with their own destructive tendencies. Althea had been raised on stories of humanity's violent history, their capacity for war and environmental destruction. To her people, humans represented everything their civilization had evolved beyond: chaos, greed, and emotional instability. As she prepared for her daily meditation in the palace's observation dome, Althea couldn't help but reflect on the recent council meeting where her parents had broached the subject of her future. At 23 cycles, roughly equivalent to 28 Earth years, she was considered well past the age when most royal daughters would have chosen a mate. The eligible candidates from allied planets had paraded through the palace, each more impressive than the last. Warriors from the volcanic world of Pyros who could withstand temperatures hot enough to melt steel, scholars from the aquatic realm of Aquaria who had memorized entire libraries of galactic knowledge, even a prince from the time-manipulating Chronos dimension who could bend temporal currents to his will. Yet Althea had dismissed them all, her resolution growing stronger with each presentation. The thought of binding herself to any of these suitors filled her with dread, though she couldn't quite articulate why. Perhaps it was the weight of expectation pressing down upon her, or maybe it was something deeper, a yearning for something she couldn't name but felt in the very core of her being. Whatever it was, it manifested in her increasingly frequent visits to the observation dome, where she would spend hours watching the stars, particularly that one small blue dot third from a modest yellow star. Earth fascinated her in ways she didn't fully understand. Despite her people's warnings about human nature, she found herself drawn to their creative spirit, their capacity for both great destruction and profound beauty. She had secretly studied their art, their music, their literature, all transmitted through the cosmic waves that constantly washed over Zylora. There was a rawness to human expression that she found both unsettling and irresistible, a vulnerability that contrasted sharply with the polished perfection of her own society. Her handmaidens noticed the change in her, how she would sometimes hum melodies that sounded nothing like traditional Zyloran music, or how she would occasionally slip into moments of silence while staring at nothing in particular. They whispered among themselves about the princess's peculiar behavior, though none dared mention their concerns to her directly. Only her closest confidant, Lady Silva, dared to approach the subject during their private tea ceremonies. "You seem troubled, my princess," Silva had said one afternoon, pouring steaming nectar from a crystal pitcher. "Is it the matter of choosing a mate? Or is there something else weighing on your luminous heart?" Althea had smiled then, a gesture that didn't quite reach her eyes. "I simply cannot imagine myself bound to any of those who have presented themselves," she replied, carefully arranging sugar crystals in the shape of a spiral galaxy. "They are all perfect specimens of their respective races, yet I feel no connection to them. No spark." Silva had nodded knowingly. "Perhaps you seek something different. Something unexpected." The older woman's starlight blue eyes had twinkled mischievously. "Though I must warn you, princess, if you're considering what I think you might be considering, the consequences could be problematic. "I know," Althea had sighed, watching the sugar dissolve into her drink. "Humans are forbidden for good reason. Their emotions run wild like untamed storms, their actions often unpredictable. But tell me, Silva, have you ever wondered if perhaps we've judged them too harshly? After all, isn't evolution driven by challenge and adversity?" The question had hung between them, unanswered, as the tea cooled in its crystal cups. That night, Althea had returned to her chambers and spent hours staring at Earth's position in the holographic star map above her bed. The blue-green orb seemed to pulse with a life of its own, calling to her in ways she couldn't explain. She knew she should turn away, focus on her duties, consider the suitable mates waiting for her decision. Instead, she found herself reaching out with her mind, trying to touch the distant world through the web of cosmic energy that connected all things. The first time Captain Marcus Hale encountered the alien signal, he was piloting a deep space probe near Saturn's rings. The transmission came in bursts of complex patterns that defied conventional encryption methods, yet somehow resonated with a strange familiarity in his mind. As a decorated officer in Earth's Space Exploration Corps, Marcus had spent years studying extraterrestrial communications, but this was different. The data stream seemed to respond to his thoughts, adjusting their frequency and intensity as if aware of his presence. Marcus's background made him uniquely suited to interpret such anomalies. Born to a family of astrophysicists aboard the International Space Station, he had grown up surrounded by the vastness of space. His childhood had been marked by periods of isolation, floating in zero gravity while his parents conducted experiments, teaching him to find comfort in solitude and meaning in the silent dance of celestial bodies. These experiences had forged in him an intuition about the cosmos that went beyond mere scientific understanding. The signals grew more persistent, appearing at irregular intervals but always when he was alone in the observation module. They manifested as shimmering patterns in the electromagnetic spectrum, visible only through specialized equipment that responded to quantum fluctuations. What truly set them apart was their emotional resonance. Each burst carried distinct impressions that Marcus could feel rather than hear. Some transmissions felt like gentle caresses against his consciousness, others like urgent whispers demanding attention. He began recording these sensations, noting how certain frequencies evoked specific memories or emotions within him. During one particularly intense session, Marcus experienced what could only be described as a vision. Through the cascade of quantum data, he perceived a crystalline world bathed in multiple suns, its surface alive with dancing light. At the center of this vision stood a figure whose presence overwhelmed his senses, a being of pure radiance whose form shifted between human-like and something far more ethereal. Though he couldn't see her face clearly, he felt her gaze pierce through the fabric of space-time, connecting with him on a level that transcended physical distance. The encounter left Marcus physically drained but mentally exhilarated. He spent hours analyzing the data, cross-referencing it with known phenomena, yet nothing in Earth's scientific archives could explain what he had experienced. The military aspect of his training kicked in, urging him to report the incident immediately, but something deeper held him back. The transmissions felt personal, intimate even, as if they were meant solely for him. Each subsequent contact brought new revelations. Glimpses of alien architecture, fragments of an unknown language that somehow made sense in his mind, and always that presence watching him from across the void. His fascination with the signals began affecting his daily life. During routine missions, his mind would wander back to the crystalline world and its mysterious inhabitant. He started noticing patterns in the transmissions that aligned with human emotional states. Joy manifesting as bright, rapid pulses, contemplation as slow, undulating waves, curiosity as intricate geometric patterns. The realization that these signals carried genuine emotion shook his understanding of alien intelligence. Most species Earth had encountered communicated through logic-based systems, yet this presence spoke directly to his feelings, bypassing traditional language barriers. As weeks turned into months, Marcus developed a method of responding to the transmissions using modified quantum entanglement devices. He discovered that his own emotional state influenced the quality of his responses. Calm focus produced coherent patterns, while excitement or anxiety created chaotic interference. This feedback loop created a rudimentary form of communication, allowing him to express basic concepts and receive equally simple replies. Through this process, he learned to recognize certain signature patterns in the alien signals, eventually identifying them as individual markers, fingerprints of consciousness. The military brass grew suspicious of his increasingly erratic behavior. Reports noted his tendency to isolate himself during off hours, his obsession with monitoring specific regions of space, and his declining interest in conventional exploration missions. When questioned, Marcus provided plausible explanations about pursuing new research avenues in quantum communication, careful to omit any mention of the sentient presence he now regularly contacted. His superiors accepted these justifications, attributing his behavior to the stress of command and the isolation of deep space assignments. Yet the truth gnawed at him. He had dedicated his life to serving Earth's interests, to protecting humanity's place among the stars. Now he found himself torn between duty and an inexplicable connection to something beyond human understanding. The transmissions had awakened something primal in him, a longing for connection that transcended species boundaries. In quiet moments, he wondered if this was how ancient explorers felt when venturing into uncharted territories, driven by a mixture of fear and wonder that defied rational explanation. The crystalline walls of Princess Althea's private sanctuary shimmered with apprehension as she processed the latest transmission from the human captain. Each quantum pulse from Earth carried not just information but raw emotion, a complex tapestry of determination, curiosity, and something deeper that resonated with her own conflicted feelings. The princess paced before her star map, her luminescent skin shifting through shades of violet and indigo as conflicting thoughts warred within her. Her parents' voices echoed in her mind, warning her about the dangers of engaging with humans. Their emotions are weapons, her mother had once cautioned during a formal banquet. They strike without warning, destroying everything in their path. Yet here she was, deliberately maintaining contact with one of them, each interaction pulling her further from her people's expectations. The human captain's persistence intrigued her. No other being had ever shown such determination to bridge the gap between their worlds. Lady Silva entered the chamber, her usually serene expression marred by concern. "Princess, the council grows suspicious. Your absences during diplomatic functions have not gone unnoticed. And there are rumors." She hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "Rumors that you've been accessing forbidden databases about Earth." Althea turned to face her confidant, her starlight eyes blazing with defiance. "What would you have me do, Silva? Ignore this connection? Pretend that these transmissions mean nothing? Every fiber of my being tells me this is important, that this human carries something vital within him." "But at what cost?" Silva pressed, moving closer. "You know the laws. Direct contact with humans is strictly forbidden. If the council discovers your transgressions..." She let the sentence hang, the implications heavy in the crystalline air. The princess sank onto her obsidian throne, the seat designed to amplify psychic abilities now throbbing with her internal conflict. She remembered the stories of humans who had nearly destroyed their own planet, of wars fought over resources, of entire ecosystems annihilated in pursuit of profit. Yet through her connection with Captain Hale, she sensed another side to humanity, a capacity for growth, for learning from mistakes, for reaching beyond their limitations. A sudden surge of energy rippled through the room as another transmission arrived. This one carried an image, a crude representation of Earth's solar system, with Saturn's rings prominently displayed. The message was clear. He was coming closer. Althea's heart raced as she realized the implications. The human captain wasn't just communicating. He was actively seeking her world, guided by their quantum connection. "Princess!" Silva exclaimed, detecting the shift in energy. "You must sever this link before it's too late. If he finds our coordinates..." "I can't," Althea whispered, rising from her throne. "Don't you see? This goes beyond mere curiosity. He's challenging everything we believe about humans, about ourselves. For the first time in my life, I feel truly alive, truly connected to something greater than royal protocol and arranged alliances." The older woman placed a comforting hand on Althea's shoulder. "Then we must prepare. If you choose to continue this path, we'll need to create safeguards. Misdirection fields, false coordinates, anything to buy us time should the council discover your activities." As they began planning their deception, Althea accessed the restricted archives, delving deeper into human psychology and culture. She devoured information about their concept of love, their art forms, their philosophical musings on existence. Each discovery added layers to her understanding of Captain Hale's transmissions, revealing a complexity that contradicted her people's simplistic view of humanity. Meanwhile, the political pressure mounted. Suitors from neighboring systems became more insistent, their families petitioning the royal court for immediate consideration. The princess's rejection of their advances sparked diplomatic tensions, with some ambassadors suggesting that her behavior bordered on treason. Yet Althea remained steadfast, her resolve strengthening with each passing day. During one particularly tense council session, her father, King Solon, confronted her publicly. "Daughter, your obsession with this human threatens the stability of our realm. You jeopardize centuries of diplomatic relations with a single-minded pursuit of—" "What exactly?" "A primitive species that can offer nothing of value to our civilization." Althea met her father's gaze, her voice steady despite the turmoil within. "Perhaps it is we who have much to learn from them, father. Their imperfections, their struggles, these are what make them remarkable. We have achieved perfection, yes, but at what cost? Have we become so polished that we've lost our ability to grow, to evolve?" The chamber fell silent, the king's expression unreadable. Before he could respond, another transmission surged through the quantum network, this one carrying an unmistakable message of longing and determination. Althea felt her heart skip a beat as she recognized the pattern. Captain Hale was closer than ever, his ship navigating the outer edges of their solar system. That night, as she prepared for another secret communication session, Althea faced her reflection in a crystal mirror. The being who stared back at her bore little resemblance to the dutiful princess she had been raised to be. Her eyes burned with a fire that hadn't existed before, her posture radiated a newfound confidence. She understood now that this wasn't just about defying her people's prejudices or satisfying her curiosity about humans. Something fundamental had shifted within her, a transformation that neither her royal status nor societal expectations could contain. As she initiated the connection, preparing to guide Captain Hale through the final stages of their approach, Althea made a decision that would alter the course of her destiny. She would meet this human, not as a princess bound by duty, but as a being seeking truth beyond the confines of her crystalline world. The consequences of this choice loomed large, but for the first time in her life, she felt ready to face them head-on. The crystalline corridors of the royal palace seemed to hum with anticipation as Princess Althea awaited her next communication with Captain Hale. Each step she took toward the quantum chamber sent ripples through the living architecture, the walls responding to her heightened emotional state with cascading rainbows of light. Her hands trembled slightly as she activated the interface, the familiar surge of energy announcing the human's presence before the actual transmission began. This time, the connection established itself more quickly than ever before, almost as if the distance between them had somehow diminished. Through the quantum stream, Althea perceived not just signals but tangible impressions of the captain's environment. She saw the metallic interior of his vessel, felt the subtle vibrations of its engines, and experienced the weightless sensation of artificial gravity. Most startling was the way their minds seemed to synchronize, their thoughts overlapping in areas of shared understanding while maintaining distinct individuality. Captain Hale's transmissions carried a new intensity, each pulse infused with a mixture of determination and something softer, more vulnerable. Althea found herself instinctively responding in kind, her own emotions flowing through the connection like liquid starlight. They exchanged impressions rather than words, memories of childhood adventures, sensations of homesickness, and visions of places they longed to explore together. The princess showed him glimpses of Zylora's diamond forests, their crystalline leaves singing in harmony with the triple sun's light. In return, he shared images of Earth's oceans, their waves crashing against rocky shores in rhythmic patterns that reminded her of her people's ancient songs. Their interactions grew more complex, evolving from simple exchanges to full-fledged conversations conducted through pure thought. Althea discovered that laughter translated beautifully across species boundaries, manifesting as sparkling bursts of energy that made both participants' spirits soar. When sadness touched either of them, the connection transformed it into shared comfort, their combined consciousness creating a safe harbor where vulnerabilities could be acknowledged without shame. Yet with each deepening connection came increased risk. Althea noticed subtle changes in her physiology. Her luminescence fluctuated more dramatically, sometimes dimming to near invisibility when overwhelmed by human emotions. Her ability to manipulate starlight required increasing concentration, as if her powers were being redirected to maintain the quantum link. More concerning were the physical symptoms: intermittent dizziness, sensitivity to Zylora's intense light, and occasional episodes where her body temperature would drop dangerously low, requiring emergency intervention from her medical staff. The political ramifications escalated alongside their relationship. The Royal Council convened emergency sessions to address what they termed the human crisis. Ambassadorial delegations from allied planets demanded explanations for Earth's unprecedented proximity to Zyloran space. Security forces implemented additional measures to protect the princess, though whether from external threats or her own choices remained unclear. Whispers of conspiracy spread through the palace, with some suggesting that Althea had been compromised by human influence, while others argued that her actions represented a necessary evolution for their stagnant society. Despite these challenges, Althea found herself unable to sever the connection. Each transmission revealed new facets of Captain Hale's character: his unwavering dedication to exploration, his capacity for empathy despite his warrior training, and his genuine curiosity about her world. She learned of his struggles with authority, his tendency to question orders that conflicted with his moral compass, and his deep-seated desire to prove that humanity deserved a place among the stars. Their bond reached a critical point during what should have been a routine diplomatic function. As Althea performed her royal duties, maintaining the facade of detached sovereignty, she felt Captain Hale's ship breach the outer perimeter of Zyloran space. The proximity caused their connection to intensify beyond anything they had previously experienced. She could feel his heartbeat matching the rhythm of her own, his breath synchronizing with hers despite the vast distance separating them. The experience was so overwhelming that she had to excuse herself from the proceedings, retreating to her private chambers where she collapsed onto the crystalline floor, her body convulsing with the force of their merged consciousness. Lady Silva found her there, her normally composed features etched with worry. "Princess, this cannot continue. You're risking everything. Your health, your position, our entire way of life. What will you do when he arrives? How will you explain this to your parents, to the council?" Althea struggled to sit up, her glow pulsing erratically. "I don't know, Silva. But I do know this. When I'm connected to him, I feel more alive than I ever have in my entire existence. It's as if all the rules, all the protocols, all the expectations, they fade away, leaving only what truly matters. Can you understand that?" Her confidant knelt beside her, taking her trembling hands. "I understand that you're changing, Princess. Not just in response to this human, but fundamentally. Your light has taken on new colors. Your thoughts follow different patterns. Even your very presence affects the palace differently now. The question is whether you're ready to embrace this transformation, whatever it may cost." As if in answer, another wave of connection surged through the quantum network. This time, Althea didn't resist it. Instead, she reached out with all her being, allowing their consciousnesses to merge completely. Through this union, she experienced Captain Hale's determination to meet her face to face, his belief that their connection could bridge the gap between their species. She felt his respect for her position, his willingness to wait until she was ready, and his absolute conviction that their bond was worth any sacrifice. When the connection finally subsided, Althea rose to her feet, her luminescence steadier than before. She looked at Silva with eyes that seemed to hold entire galaxies within them. "Prepare the archives," she said softly. "Gather everything we have about human culture, their history, their potential. We need to understand exactly what we're dealing with before he arrives. Because one thing is certain, Captain Marcus Hale is coming to Zylora, whether our laws permit it or not." The crystalline structure of Princess Althea's heart seemed to fracture and reform with each passing moment, reshaping itself around the impossible connection she maintained with the human captain. As their bond deepened through the quantum network, she found herself questioning everything she had been taught about emotional attachment. According to Zyloran teachings, emotions were meant to flow like controlled rivers, directed through carefully constructed channels of reason and protocol. Yet Captain Hale's feelings poured into her consciousness like molten starlight, burning away the dam she had built around her heart. Each transmission brought new revelations about human emotional complexity. Where her people experienced emotions as refined frequencies, easily categorized and managed, the captain's feelings arrived in chaotic bursts that defied classification. Love intertwined with fear, joy mingled with sorrow, determination clashed with doubt, all existing simultaneously in a glorious mess that both terrified and fascinated her. She began to understand that this emotional turbulence was precisely what made human connection so powerful, each feeling amplified by its contrast with opposing states. The princess's transformation became evident in subtle ways. Her royal duties, once performed with mechanical precision, now carried traces of human spontaneity. During formal audiences, she found herself responding with unexpected warmth, her luminescence shifting through colors that reflected genuine empathy rather than prescribed protocol. Courtiers whispered about her changed demeanor, some interpreting it as weakness, others recognizing it as strength of a different kind. Most alarming were the physiological changes accompanying her emotional evolution. Her starlight manipulation abilities, once honed to surgical precision, now fluctuated unpredictably. Sometimes her power would surge beyond control, illuminating entire chambers with blinding radiance. Other times, her glow would dim to near extinction, leaving her vulnerable to Zylora's harsh light. Medical examinations revealed alterations in her quantum signature, suggesting that prolonged exposure to human emotions was actually rewriting her biological code. These changes sparked heated debates among the royal scientists. Some argued that the princess's condition represented contamination, proof that human influence could corrupt even the purest lumina essence. Others, more progressive in their thinking, suggested that these modifications might indicate evolutionary potential, a possible path to a new stage of development for their species. The controversy divided the scientific community, with research teams secretly competing to document and analyze the princess's transformation. Amidst this chaos, Althea's connection with Captain Hale grew more intimate, transcending mere emotional exchange to encompass shared experiences. Through their quantum link, she participated in his memories. The rush of adrenaline during combat missions, the quiet satisfaction of solving complex navigational problems, the bittersweet ache of missing Earth while floating among the stars. These shared moments created a tapestry of understanding that defied simple description, each thread adding depth and texture to their bond. Yet with intimacy came vulnerability. Althea began experiencing phantom sensations when the captain encountered danger, his injuries registering as sharp pains in her own body, his fear triggering involuntary defensive responses. During one particularly harrowing encounter with space debris, she collapsed in the middle of a state dinner, her scream of pain echoing through the crystal hall as she felt the impact reverberate through their connection. The incident forced her to implement stricter controls on their communication, establishing safe parameters that protected her physical well-being while maintaining their emotional link. The political ramifications of their relationship reached critical mass when the Royal Council discovered evidence of unauthorized modifications to the planetary defense grid. Investigations revealed that someone had been feeding false coordinates to Earth's approaching vessel, allowing it to navigate safely through Zyloran space. While no direct evidence pointed to the princess, the timing and nature of the breaches suggested inside assistance. The revelation triggered a security lockdown, with enhanced surveillance installed throughout the palace and restrictions placed on all outgoing communications. Despite these obstacles, Althea and Captain Hale found ways to deepen their connection. They developed a sophisticated code language that allowed them to communicate through seemingly random quantum fluctuations, bypassing the new security measures. Their messages became poetry in motion, mathematical patterns that danced across the electromagnetic spectrum, carrying layers of meaning that only they could interpret. Through this encrypted dialogue, they planned their eventual meeting, knowing that time was running out before their secret would be exposed. The princess's emotional journey reached a pivotal moment during a rare visit to Zylora's ancient archives. Hidden within the restricted sections, she discovered documents detailing previous encounters with human explorers, accounts that had been carefully redacted from official records. These historical documents revealed that several Zyloran researchers had secretly studied human emotions, documenting their transformative effects on various species. One particularly disturbing entry described how exposure to human compassion had caused a group of militant species to abandon their aggressive tendencies, while another chronicled how human creativity had inspired artistic revolutions among traditionally pragmatic civilizations. These revelations forced Althea to confront the true magnitude of what was happening to her. She wasn't merely falling in love with a human, she was undergoing a fundamental metamorphosis that could reshape her entire species. The realization filled her with both terror and exhilaration, her emotions oscillating between extremes as she grappled with the implications. Was she becoming something new, something better? Or was she losing herself to an alien influence that would ultimately destroy everything she had been? Through their quantum connection, Captain Hale sensed her turmoil and responded with characteristic human resilience. He shared stories of Earth's own evolutionary struggles, describing how humanity had repeatedly faced extinction-level threats only to emerge stronger and more adaptable. His faith in her ability to navigate this transformation strengthened her resolve, helping her find balance between her Zyloran heritage and the human qualities blossoming within her. As their ship approached the coordinates where Zylora should have been, Captain Marcus Hale experienced a surge of emotions that threatened to overwhelm his training and discipline. The quantum link with Princess Althea pulsed stronger than ever, her presence flooding his consciousness with images of crystalline landscapes and multicolored suns. Yet beneath this beauty, he detected something troubling: the subtle distortion of reality itself, as if the very fabric of space-time bent to conceal her world from prying eyes. The ship's instruments confirmed his suspicions. Where detailed stellar charts indicated empty space, his sensors registered minute gravitational anomalies and faint energy signatures that shouldn't exist. Years of military training screamed caution, but the human part of him, driven by instinct and emotion, urged him forward. The contradiction tore at his psyche, forcing him to confront the fundamental differences between his logical training and the intuitive connection he shared with the alien princess. Each attempt to penetrate the veil surrounding Zylora triggered a cascade of conflicting impulses. His tactical mind identified the situation as a classic trap scenario, complete with misdirection fields and probable defensive systems. Yet through the quantum link, he received reassurances from Althea, not in words, but in feelings of trust and anticipation that bypassed his rational defenses. The contrast between these perspectives created a cognitive dissonance that manifested physically, causing his hands to tremble as they hovered over the navigation controls. The human capacity for hope proved both his greatest strength and most dangerous vulnerability. Where a purely logical approach would have dictated retreat and reassessment, his emotional investment in Althea pushed him to take calculated risks. He began implementing experimental maneuvers learned from studying Earth's early space pioneers, techniques that relied more on intuition than precise calculations. These unorthodox methods yielded mixed results, sometimes bringing him closer to his goal, other times triggering automated defenses that forced him to retreat. Communication with Earth Command became increasingly strained. His regular reports contained carefully constructed half-truths, omitting details about the quantum link and his determination to reach Zylora. The strain of maintaining this deception manifested in sleepless nights spent staring at the stars, his mind racing with possibilities. Would his superiors understand his actions if they discovered the truth? Could he justify prioritizing a personal connection over his duty to Earth's interests? The psychological toll mounted as he navigated this moral gray area. Military protocols emphasized clear objectives and predictable outcomes, but his connection with Althea defied such categorization. Each transmission brought new revelations about Zyloran society: their mastery of starlight manipulation, their complex social structures, their deeply ingrained prejudices against humanity. These insights challenged his preconceived notions about alien civilizations, forcing him to reconcile his scientific understanding with the emotional reality of their bond. Most perplexing was the way his perception of time began to shift. Hours spent communicating with Althea felt like minutes, while moments of separation stretched into eternity. This temporal distortion affected his decision-making processes, making it difficult to judge the appropriate pace for his approach. Should he accelerate his efforts, risking detection and possible confrontation? Or should he proceed with caution, honoring the princess's request for patience while fighting against his growing impatience? His crew noticed the changes in his behavior. Subtle at first, slight deviations from standard operating procedures, unusual interest in theoretical physics papers about dimensional folding. They gradually became impossible to ignore. During briefings, his eyes would sometimes lose focus, as if listening to voices only he could hear. His tactical decisions grew increasingly unconventional, incorporating elements of chance and intuition that made his officers uneasy. The quantum link itself evolved, becoming less about simple communication and more about shared experience. Althea began transmitting not just thoughts but sensory impressions. The taste of Zyloran nectar, the sound of crystalline forests singing in the triple winds, the sensation of walking barefoot on living crystal. These transmissions rewired his neural pathways, creating synesthetic responses that blurred the lines between his human senses and alien perceptions. The color purple no longer just represented a wavelength of light. It carried the weight of royal responsibility and the thrill of forbidden love. As his ship skirted the edge of Zylora's cloaking field, Captain Hale faced a choice that encapsulated all his conflicting impulses. Sensor readings indicated a narrow window where the field's integrity momentarily weakened, offering a potential entry point. Military protocol demanded he maintain position and await reinforcements. His emotional connection with Althea urged him to seize the opportunity immediately. Logic suggested setting up remote probes to gather more data before committing. Yet somewhere deep within his consciousness, a purely human instinct told him to trust his gut, to follow the path that felt right despite the risks. The tension between these opposing forces reached a breaking point during what should have been a routine maintenance check. As his engineers worked on the ship's quantum communication array, he felt Althea's presence surge through their link with unprecedented intensity. Through their connection, he experienced her struggle against her own people's restrictions, her battle to maintain their bond while facing increasing pressure from the Royal Council. The raw emotion of her situation overwhelmed his carefully constructed barriers, causing him to make a decision that defied all military training. Without consulting his officers or informing Earth Command, Captain Hale initiated a series of maneuvers that brought his ship dangerously close to the cloaking field's boundary. His actions weren't reckless but rather calculated based on patterns he had observed through his connection with Althea. He trusted that she would guide him through the maze of defenses, her quantum signals acting as a beacon in the distorted space around Zylora. The move represented the ultimate synthesis of his human intuition and military precision, each impulse informing and enhancing the other. As the ship approached the critical threshold, Captain Hale felt his consciousness expand beyond its normal limits. Time seemed to stretch and compress simultaneously, his human perception merging with alien dimensions of existence. Through the quantum link, he witnessed events unfolding on Zylora. The princess confronting her parents in the crystal throne room, the royal guard mobilizing in response to unauthorized movements near their borders, the entire planet holding its collective breath as their carefully maintained isolation faced its greatest challenge. The moment of truth arrived as his ship crossed into the cloaking field's perimeter. Reality bent and twisted around them, colors shifting outside the viewport in ways that defied human comprehension. Through the chaos, he maintained his focus, guided by both his training and the emotional anchor provided by Althea's presence in his mind. The ship systems screamed warnings, but he silenced them with practiced efficiency, trusting in the connection that had become as vital to him as oxygen. On the bridge, his crew watched in stunned silence as their commander transformed before their eyes. The disciplined military officer they had known seemed to merge with something more primal, more instinctual. His movements became fluid and precise, like a dancer performing an intricate routine learned through years of practice. Yet underlying this grace was a raw determination that spoke to the human core of his being. The same drive that had propelled Earth's earliest explorers beyond their planet's atmosphere, chasing dreams larger than themselves. Through the quantum link, Althea experienced Captain Hale's approach as both triumph and tragedy. Each meter his ship gained represented a victory for their connection, yet also brought them closer to inevitable confrontation with her people's laws. She felt his human emotions, the thrill of discovery, the fear of failure, the stubborn refusal to give up, resonating through their bond, amplifying her own conflicting feelings. The crystalline structure of her heart seemed to vibrate with the intensity of their shared purpose, threatening to shatter the delicate balance she had maintained for so long. As their vessels drew closer, separated only by the thin veil of Zylora's defenses, both beings prepared for the consequences of their actions. They understood that this moment would define not just their relationship but potentially the future of interspecies diplomacy. The human captain's approach represented more than just a romantic pursuit. It symbolized humanity's determination to reach beyond its limitations, to challenge preconceptions, and to prove that love could transcend even the vast distances between stars. Yet neither could predict how their peoples would react to this unprecedented encounter. Would the Zylorans see Captain Hale as a threat to their carefully ordered society? Would Earth view Althea's welcoming of a human as an opportunity for conquest or alliance? The answers to these questions hung suspended in the quantum ether, waiting to be revealed as their ships continued their fateful convergence. As the cloaking field enveloped Captain Hale's ship, reality seemed to shimmer like a mirage. Althea stood atop Zylora's crystalline spire, her luminescent form blazing with both fear and resolve. Through their quantum link, she felt his determination surge as he breached the final barrier, his human heart pounding in rhythm with her alien essence. The Royal Council descended upon the throne room, their voices a cacophony of outrage and disbelief. "You have betrayed us," her father thundered, but Althea's gaze remained steady, her starlight unwavering. She had made her choice, and now it was time to face the consequences. Captain Hale's vessel emerged through the distortion, its sleek metallic frame glinting under Zylora's triple suns. For the first time, they would meet not as distant echoes in a quantum stream, but as beings of flesh and spirit. The air crackled with anticipation, the weight of two civilizations hanging precariously on what came next. Althea stepped forward, her voice resonating across the assembled crowd. "This is no betrayal," she declared, her words carrying the gravity of prophecy. "This is evolution. If we cannot embrace change, then we are no better than the stagnant stars that refuse to burn." Her parents exchanged anguished looks, torn between their love for their daughter and their duty to their people. Meanwhile, Earth's command issued urgent transmissions, demanding an explanation for Hale's unauthorized entry into alien space. Yet none of it mattered anymore. Not the laws, not the protocols, not the centuries of isolation. As the captain disembarked, his eyes locked onto hers, bridging the gap between worlds. Their connection pulsed brighter than ever, a beacon of possibility amidst the chaos. Althea extended her hand, trembling yet resolute, while Marcus took one step, then another, closing the distance that had once seemed insurmountable. The gathered crowd gasped, some stepping back in horror, others leaning forward in awe. A princess of light and a human of shadow, two beings who should never have met, now stood face to face, defying every rule that had governed their existence. And though neither knew what the future held, they understood one truth. Love, no matter how improbable, had found them. In that moment, the universe seemed to pause, holding its breath as humanity and the Lumina race teetered on the edge of transformation. Would this act of defiance unite them or tear them apart? Only time would tell, but for now, all that mattered was the promise in their intertwined hands.